My name is Adam B. Levine, and I'm pleased to introduce the other hosts here at LTB, Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Hi.
And Andreas M. Antonopoulos.
Hello.
Today we've also got a special guest, Charlie Shrem, a founding member of the Bitcoin Foundation and a guy trapped in Brooklyn at this point in time. Charlie, how you doing?
Hey, I could be better, but not so bad.
Yeah, you've had a wild couple of weeks, huh, Charlie?
Yeah.
I don't know if people are familiar with your case, but you basically have been the target of a pretty serious investigation with some charges, and it's really affected your life, huh?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was speaking at a conference in Amsterdam, their CES, their Consumer Electronics show was very big. And as soon as I landed home, JFK Airport in New York, I was immediately arrested by a task force of over 7 agents from the DEA and IRS, put into federal prison overnight before my arraignment the next day.
Came as a complete shock to you?
Complete shock to me, because we had been working with state government of New York for over 2 years in my capacity of BitInstant, helping them develop the idea of the bit license that people are familiar with, developing the ideas for the hearings. I was the one who helped them invite and create the panels. I was supposed to be testifying at the New York State hearings as well. And this is a political battle, I guess. I mean, I was arrested the day before the hearings and my invitation redacted, obviously. I was sitting in prison during the hearings. So we're not really sure what's going on.
Do you regret trying to work on that?
It kind of sucks that a lot of the information that is being used against me, I voluntarily gave to them. The evidence comes down to pretty much emails, and most of the stuff is taken completely out of context. And they're not going to say joke, but it's scary. It's serious crimes if someone did them. Money laundering is not a joke. Operating a money transmitter business is not a joke either. These are scary, scary charges. And the thing is, the time period that the alleged crimes took place was in early 2012, over a year and a half ago. We changed the BitInstant model since then. I started the Bitcoin Foundation. I spoke to local, state, and federal regulators. Why I signed proffer agreements. Proffer agreements are basically when you go in there and you give them information and they can't use this information against you. But what they did was they used this information as leads to use against me in the future. So I pretty much dug my own grave here. And people warned me about this. They said, Charlie, they will come after you. And I was naive. And I said, no, I'm out in the open. I'm not a criminal. Everyone knows who I am. I make speeches. I go out there and I'm very pro working with the state on Bitcoin. We need regulation. There are things that need to happen. You need to, if you're going to operate a company in the United States, you need to follow the laws legally or work to change them. People warned me. They said, you should stay under the radar. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a Bitcoin evangelist. And they were all right. Bit me in the ass.
Do you still think Bitcoin needs regulation?
I think that Bitcoin needs to work in cooperation with authorities. And what that is, I think that, I'll just give you an example. The state regulators about a year ago said to me, Charlie, how should we regulate Bitcoin? And I said, first of all, you need someone like me in your office explaining to you that you can't regulate Bitcoin. However, you can regulate effectively Bitcoin companies that operate in the space financial service industry. That you can do. And they said, all right, so should we apply the existing money transmitter laws to them? And I said, well, no, because those laws are not transparent. It takes years to get a license. You need over $5 million. And even though we live in the United States of America, you need a different license for every single state. Whereas if you live in Canada, no matter what province you live in, you just need one license and it works in the whole country. Same thing in Europe. If you have a license in Poland, you can work with every European country. So in the United States, why can't we have that?
Why set up a Bitcoin business in New York? Not blaming you or anything, but do you wish that you had just gone a different route and gone to Panama or Canada or something?
My understanding was that I'm from New York, born and raised in New York, and for a lot of roots and ties to the New York community here, going back since I was a kid. Very close with a lot of people here, and my family and friends, are here. And if you're going to operate in Panama or Canada, if you want to be in the U.S. market, you still need those licenses. So it's not going to change anything if I go out. If I want to launch in Canada and just want to get the European market or the Canadian market, that's one thing. But there's such a huge Bitcoin market in the United States that you have to do it. So I went full frontal, went after it.
Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged?
I didn't read it, but I'm really familiar with Ayn Rand.
Sometimes I feel like the Bitcoin world is like mirroring the plot of Atlas Shrugged. I've said it a couple times before, but...
No, it's true. There was a quote on Reddit, and I put it on my Facebook wall yesterday. It's a quote that what she said was, the first motor was considered foolish. The airplane was considered impossible. The power loom was considered vicious. Anesthesia was considered sinful. But the men of unborrowed vision went ahead. They fought, they suffered, and they paid. But they won.
That's a
and
good
it's
quote.
like, if you ever read what Western Union's executives back in the day thought about the telephone, it's hilarious. You know, when people are in something, they're blind to the next phase. And I think intentionally because it could replace them.
Mm-hmm. So, Charlie, looking at this from the inside, really, do you see this as an attack against Bitcoin, or is this more likely large bureaucracies with inertia and individuals trying to make a career out of adding Bitcoin to their prosecutor's resume?
The last.
This is not a warning shot for the Bitcoin ecosystem. We're going to come and pick you off one by one.
If you're not doing anything illegal, then you don't have anything to worry about.
Who's not doing something illegal?
I should take that back. But what I'm getting at here is there was a reason that they went after me, Andreas, like you said in the Joe Rogan show. And there was a reason that they arrested me the day before the hearings at the airport. If you read the news articles, it didn't say that I was landing. It said I was arrested at the airport as if I was fleeing. You know, they did all this on purpose.
To help a prosecutor gain the publicity that will help with his state Senate run, for example?
Exactly. Oddly enough, how did the press know I was going to be arrested? The press was at the airport. Who told them? My lawyers didn't know. No, who knew? The only person who knew they were going to be arresting me is the prosecutor's office. Attaching things like money laundering to it, they want to make me seem like a criminal. Why? I don't know.
It's much harder to go after some of the real money laundering criminals in New York because they have political power and can fight
they have
back.
licenses.
No, I mean, it's not about licenses. It's about raw political power. They can make a prosecutor's career, destroy it. They can absolutely destroy the career of a prosecutor. And if a prosecutor decides they want to go after someone who, say, has destroyed 1 million families by mortgage foreclosure fraud, then that prosecutor is going to find themselves in very deep trouble very quickly.
It's a club. It's a club. The way it works is you have assistant U.S. attorney. Like, for example, in my situation, you have Preet Bharara. Right? Preet Bharara is the U.S. attorney appointed by Barack Obama. Now, there are other U.S. attorneys, but he is one below Eric Holder. And when Eric Holder, the attorney general, they were thinking about him resigning, the first person on the list of taking his place was this guy, Preet Bharara. The reason is Preet Bharara is the U.S. attorney of the Southern District of New York. Southern District of New York is the largest district in the country, and it gets all the financial cases.
Of which there have been surprisingly few in the last 5 years, all the financial cases. And if yours is the biggest case they're prosecuting, that's something wrong with our justice system.
You have this guy, tax holder money, to go after a 24-year-old kid from Brooklyn over nothing more than $1 million. And it's not the money laundering that we all understand it as. It's not money laundering that they're going after me where you take money, you launder it, and then you wash it and try to hide sources. This is Section 2A of the money laundering statute. Section 2A, I'm not super familiar with it, but it's where you help move money internationally and you conceal it or some way or another. I don't understand it specifically, but it's not the standard money laundering that we all know it as.
Charlie, just so we're clear, do you deny that these charges against you? I mean, like, are you fighting these charges against you? These are incorrect charges? We're talking about how you're being targeted, but we haven't actually talked about whether or not you're actually saying that it's not true.
This is the money laundering statute that they're going after me for. Section 2A, the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, it says, whoever transmits or transfers or attempts to transport, transmit, or transfer monetary instrument of funds from a place in the United States or throughout a place outside the United States or to a place in the United States or through a place outside the United States, A, with the intent to promote carrying on of specified unlawful activity. Charges come down to this. This guy, BTC King, was allegedly advertising on Silk Road the ability to buy Bitcoin. This guy allegedly was on Silk Road advertising buy Bitcoin with cash. what he did was he would then allegedly send customers to BitInstant. Customers would then use BitInstant not to buy Bitcoin, to merely fund their Mt. Gox accounts. Because I don't know if you know, BitInstant never sold Bitcoin. We merely put money into your Mt. Gox account. So we had money in our Mt. Gox account. We transfer it to your Mt. Gox account. So then we'd put money into their Mt. Gox account. At that point, the BitInstant transaction was completed, over. Now, at that point, the customer can then use that money to buy Bitcoin. Once they bought the Bitcoin, they can then send the Bitcoin to their Silk Road wallet. Once it was in their Silk Road wallet, they can then use it to buy illicit goods on Silk Road.
Did these customers look any different to your company when they were
Absolutely
coming in?
not.
Like, here's the other thing. I mean, I visited the Silk Road back in the days.
Be careful admitting that.
No, I visited it in order to see what was on there, and I wanted
For
to
research purposes.
Well, no,
purposes only.
You know, I had no interest in the product they were offering, but I really did want to see what was offered because I was curious. You know, what is the breadth of product? How I was reading things on the news we were talking about on the show, so I visited the site and I logged on. Well, here's the interesting thing. One thing I noticed is that, yes, there were obviously a lot of a broad variety of illegal products on there, but there were also a lot of legal products. I mean, Silk Road was not just selling drugs. They were also selling
you can buy shirts,
banners and
clothing.
T-shirts and baseball cap, pins and mugs and things like that. In fact, I met someone who asked me if they could take my Safe Paper Wallet product, which is essentially just colored pre-printed sheets of paper for making prettier paper wallets. It's now discontinued, but at the time they asked me if they could sell it for me on the Silk Road. And essentially this was of a merchant who was selling T-shirts and things like that, as far as I know.
Interesting.
They said, you know, I sell on the Silk Road because as a merchant site or market site, I've got buyers who have trust metrics and reviews behind them. And I've got a captive audience. I've got a large audience of people who already have money in the system on Silk Road and therefore essentially can make impulse purchases of things like mugs and T-shirts and Bitcoin pins, things that are perfectly legal. So this was a merchant who was selling legal stuff and just using Silk Road because that was a relatively vibrant marketplace with people who had reviews on it.
It was really a drummed down version of eBay.
Exactly.
eBay
I mean,
without all the rules and also the fees. eBay takes like 30%.
Obviously, 80-90% probably of the products on there were products you wouldn't find on eBay. And, you know, reading through the list was pretty eye-opening for me. But
I didn't even know half those drugs existed, right?
Yeah, but I had to look some of those things up on Wikipedia. But at the same time, you know, there was a percentage of products that were perfectly legal. In fact, I think one of the users of the site who had their funds seized is now suing to get it unseized under the claim that they only use the site to purchase legal products. Even the claim that someone who has an account, or even more so, someone who has money on Silk Road and has used it as a customer, that guarantees that they were buying drugs, I don't think is true. There was a substantial non-infringing or non-illegal use going on. It wasn't zero, whatever that means.
I agree with you 100%. There are so many steps removed. If you can make the case against me, you should be able to take down any person who runs an ATM machine. Because more often, someone who's using that ATM machine is going to be pulling out cash in order to buy drugs on the street. Or anything illegal, for that matter.
Well, I think there's also a substantial difference between the allegations against you, which involve, from what I read at least, selling Bitcoin to someone who sold Bitcoin to someone who possibly bought drugs.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about buyers of drugs. Then the allegations, for example, against Wachovia or HSBC, where they were delivering suitcases of cash and laundering suitcases of cash for the most violent drug cartels in the world. At the time when there was effectively almost a civil war in northern Mexico between the Sinaloa cartel and government forces that caught up and killed 19,000 people, most of them civilians.
Yeah, but the government admitted. They already admitted to this. I forgot who made the statement the other day, but he's like, yeah, the reason we didn't arrest these guys is because if we arrested HSBC executives, they would do their banking license, and the banks would fail. Too big to fail.
Yeah, too big to fail is too big to jail. But again, I think beyond the scale, and I don't think that the scale as much is necessarily the issue, because at least in my mind, a crime that has a victim or that victimizes people in the most horrible way, it doesn't really matter the scale, although, of course, we are talking about things that are 600,000 times larger in scale.
Yeah.
But even without the scale, I think there is a fundamental difference between the idea that someone who allegedly sold Bitcoin thrice removed from a potential buyer of recreational narcotics versus someone who's funneling money directly to the cartels. That's a qualitative difference, I think, that's important. And it speaks to prosecutorial discretion, right? I mean, there's a reason prosecutors have discretion, and it's not so they can pick the cases that give them the best resume with the lowest political risk. So they can pursue the cases that cause the most harm to society.
One could make the case, not that I'm making the case, because this interview probably will be used against me in the court of law. So I'm saying this, not me, prosecutors. A case could be made, not I'm making the case, but a case could be made that Silk Road did a service to the drug industry, because what you're doing is all these people are getting their drugs from somewhere, whether it's Silk Road or it's on the street, they're getting their drugs somewhere. Now, would you rather them getting it from the street, supporting drug cartels with dirty needles, spreading HIV, all these negative connotations, money that's probably going to be used to kill people, or would you rather them buy it on a safe marketplace, clean reviews, high quality, from people who are probably growing this stuff or making this stuff in their own homes and not part of larger drug cartels kidnapping people?
Well, I think that's a question, unfortunately, that they've answered several times before. They would much rather that there be the harm.
Right. This is really the underlying issue, which is that the war on X is usually a great excuse to do enormous amounts of fundraising, essentially unlimited budgets. In this particular case, these online marketplaces threaten the cartels. They threaten the cartels more than they threaten any other organization. They don't threaten the viability of drug enforcement because, in fact, if anything, they provide a very easy trail and a very easy way to honeypot the co-conspirators involved in running the site.
Imagine Silk Road worked. Imagine.
Yeah, it threatens the big cartels. It takes away their funding, because if an addict who has no choice but to fulfill their addiction has a choice between doing that dark street corner with someone with a gun or a knife or a violent criminal versus via USPS, no contest.
Right. And imagine like states can issue medical marijuana licenses, and someone can upload their license ID number onto Silk Road, therefore legally allowed to buy marijuana on Silk Road. Imagine a situation like that. That would effectively wipe out marijuana industry. And what's the most imported drug from Mexico is marijuana. So the cartels make all their money right now.
But it really looks good on a prosecutor's resume. If they can combine drugs, money laundering, and Bitcoin in one sentence, that looks better, at least to their superiors and the people making the appointments, and to a certain section of voters. Now, to me, it would look better if they frog-marched a bunch of bank executives out of Wall Street for destroying the lives of millions of people while stealing trillions of dollars.
Exactly. Like, I'm going to get a jury, right? If this case goes to trial, they're going to pick a jury of like old ladies who just hear drugs, put this kid away. It's a scary thought.
I've been on a jury with old ladies who are much smarter than the prosecutor, and
prosecutor has in federal case, the prosecutor pretty much has final say over who's going to be on the jury and who's not.
Yeah, that's the difference. I was on a jury in a different country where a case like that was prosecuted, and I can tell you the jury of the peers knew very well what was harmful and what was not.
I'm learning that state cases are much more fair than federal ones are, because federal prison is nicer. People prefer to be tried federally.
I don't have much faith in juries, but good luck, Charlie.
Yeah, I hope you actually make it to a jury, because unfortunately what we've seen with the justice system, especially in the federal courts, is that 99% of these cases get plea bargains because they present you with an impossible choice. take a risk against a 60-year sentence versus pleading out for a year or two.
That's the whole thing. That's what it is.
It's blackmail.
And I can't discuss the merits of it, but it would be face a 30-year sentence or work with us and probably get no time, but still plead for everything. And now I have to basically plead. I would have to plead to things that I didn't do,
which would help the prosecutor's resume
and kill my future.
Put a black mark on Bitcoin.
This is Chris Joseph bringing you news on Next, the first true second-generation cryptocurrency for February 25th, 2014. The creation of online tools for Next continues. In addition to this week's implementation of merchant services on coinpayments.net and the proof of concept creation of an automated Next to Dogecoin gateway, mynext.info has created Next's first secure online wallet. Available at wallet.mynext.info, this service lets you create an online Next wallet with nothing but an email address and a password. No downloads or clients are needed, and you can begin receiving and sending Next right away. The site also features an alerter service, which will send you an email when Next is sent to or from your Next account. For more information on Next, head to nextcrypto.org or get started with your online Next wallet at wallet.mynext.info. Stay tuned for more news on Next in the next Let's Talk Bitcoin broadcast.